Civilizing America, a user's guide from the ground up. Chapter 9, Reach Difficult People. I should acknowledge that the word difficult people is really a shorthand for saying people that are hard to communicate with. We're not labeling the person themselves. For those fixed on mediocre thinking, we need superior communication methods. Understanding the problem. Some people hold on to ideas that harm society well past any defensible point. An insight on why that can happen came from Doris, the first social worker I ever knew, and has remained thought-provoking across the ages. Hurt, fear, and anger occur together, she explained. When you see any one of the three, the other two are there also, just less obvious. The reason may lie in how we react when stressed or hurt. We channel part of our otherwise versatile attention into fear or anger to defend against the hurt. Our brain becomes absorbed in this inner agenda, so that a personal history of hurts severely diminishes our accurate awareness of self and world and makes our interactions more patterned, rigid, and prone to anger. This affects our purposes here because distressed feelings depress abstract thinking, overwhelming the delicate perceptions we use in distinguishing among values. Distressed people often judge poorly because their distresses soak up the mental energy needed for weighing sensitive discriminations. Think of your mind when you are relaxed and happy, and you turn your attention to an issue involving an amorphous quality like justice or cooperation or love. Your mind readily enters a field of understanding whose features bind delicately to each other. Hurt, fear, and anger upset this field, like an army storming into a quiet church service. When you are furious about something, a friend knows not to bring up an issue about community heritage. Angry at one child, you skate past another's innocent request. Your boss's criticism shakes your balance about your job. Strong emotions override sensitive perceptions. Understanding just this much cautions us against judging others who appear unreasonable. Remembering they were probably hurt, we will usually be correct, inviting our compassion rather than our annoyance. Our problem expands, however, with a finding from multiple threads of research that people prone to fear tend more toward conservative political views, affecting their perspective on the world. They may be more alert to possible threats to their well-being and to the downside of ambiguous clues, and hence more suspicious. They may be more reactive, drawn toward negativity, challenged by new experience, and seek support from others who view life similarly. While that pattern helps to explain some liberal-conservative differences, three social needs multiply them further. Humans are programmed to seek inclusion, affection, and control, called the fundamental interpersonal relationship orientation. We need to know we have a place in a group, that people like us, and that our ideas have influence. Fear increases our sense of vulnerability and challenges these needs so that we instinctively reach for more power and welcome others who feel similarly. Bonds with the latter seem to strengthen us, channeling us into antagonism against a common enemy and relieving us of the need for self-awareness. We welcome even a vicarious adventure of defeating a threat. To talk to someone in that state, we reach them first in their inner life of emotions, values, and assumptions. Our challenge is not only to deliver our message, but to get them to like it. We may assume we do so by improving our idea, but this is often incorrect. What matters more to them are the feelings, loyalties, familiarities, and social links they attach to their views. We have to calm their feelings and sidestep their attachments enough that we can offer an idea and have it considered. Until then, ideas bounce off. Words are our tools for altering their state. Every word has a ring to it that invites certain reactions. Poking someone in the ribs, we can expect them to be uncomfortable. And if we want to start a fight, we keep doing it. We need to be acutely aware, alert to what our words call forth. The word Trump, for instance, will elicit complex associations in both supporters and opponents. The word alone advances a field of meaning that can dominate awareness. Wanting our exchange to be useful, we notice which words elicit a positive state. We do not use those that lead the other way, and learn by observing their effect. Common ones may elicit different reactions, so we check out each person's. The word family may return someone to resentments and conflicts, but restore another to good times and loving feelings. The word job could reverberate with frustration or with progress and success. An easy way to move someone toward positive feelings with our words is that when they say something negative, we ask them a question about the least negative thing they say and continue doing so. Asking someone, for instance, "Were you into sports when you were young?" is verbally neutral, but could lead to a positive thread. If they say, "Nah, I didn't like joining stuff," we can pursue the track they open. "So, how did you like to spend your time?" Or they may say, "Yeah, I like soccer," even if they were not on a league team. Once identifying a zone with general good feelings, inviting details may arouse more of them, like recalling friendships, group efforts, and positive time spent. Driving our bus. While our effectiveness with others depends on using better words, they arise in turn from our own internal process. Above we noted internality as essential for both spirituality and democracy, but it also aids human survival by enabling us to pose alternatives. we have this idea or feeling over here. And while we sustain it, consider that one over there. We take time to weigh each, notice the better, and then choose to pursue it. The crux of this sequence is recognizing a condition without acting on it, until we know it leads to a constructive outcome, which in turn increases our versatility. We can choose not just between yes and no, but from many possibilities. We might think of this capacity to choose among options as driving a bus. In the driver's seat is the part of us currently directing our actions, while other parts, called subpersonalities, are in seats nearby and would steer us differently if called on. Another part might be more acceptant or competitive than our present one, reactive or empathic, withdrawn or connective, etc. We create these parts by encountering familiar situations repeatedly in daily activity and devising a standard strategy to cope with each one. But once knowing we have alternate parts to choose from, we get better at adopting the best one to drive our bus just now. Our ability to employ varied responses is central. 40 years as a clinical psychologist have alerted me that there are better and worse ways to handle disagreement. People usually resolve problems with better thinking, and a professional may help them do that. But society has no counselor to whom to take its problems. It must search out the constructive thinking available in its own better parts. Though differences worsen when either we or our opponents are immersed in an ineffective part of ourselves. This happens constantly because people who never learned how to build an idea with others can stay stuck in their ill-formed certainties. Maybe they grew up unheard, their thinking not respected, and believed that saying, "I don't know," demeaned them. For a tiny purchase on self-esteem, they decided to appear certain about issues for which a firm opinion was socially acceptable. Knowing that differences and downsides lurk about us, we need to invite others' more effective parts to drive their bus. Noticing, for instance, that we have drawn someone's anger and opposition, we know we failed, even at this preliminary step, and need to change our approach. Several efforts can improve our strategy. A sequential plan. Factors that help generate change are to set aside our own needs, initiate, let others talk, have a strategy, exhibit respect, find strengths even in others' flaws, be safe for them, speak their language, match their characteristics, listen carefully, draw them out, discern their deeper meaning, and have something to say. To consider each of these, We decide first not to satisfy ourselves, not to insist on others' support, respect, cooperation, or appreciation. We refuse to indulge in feeling insulted, resentful, taken for granted, or discounted. Our sole need is for the other person, for changes moving them in a healthy direction. Suspending our personal needs frees us to channel the full resources of our mind and emotions toward the greatest help to the other. Even to begin, we may need to step up our assertiveness. Most people underestimate by about 50% their ability to get what they want from others just by asking. It helps to be one-on-one, since even with a single ally, they resist contrary ideas more. In chapters 2 and 8, we examine several aspects of this initial outreach and the good feelings that should result. Especially when others have long suppressed their ideas, we often benefit by letting them do most of the talking, even 5 times as much as we do. It invests them more in the exchange and lets us think carefully about the best response. A clue that we listen well is having the other accept our comments readily. If instead we quickly assert an opinion, challenge their idea, object to their factualness, blame their attitude, or contradict what they say, we seldom improve the exchange. In Chapter 11, we explain how, in small group discussions, we can practice encouraging others to talk. We think through what we will do. Samurais taught, first defeat your enemy in your own mind. While this may seem an ordinary point, it can be a life-changing epiphany. Beyond just making a general plan, we immerse ourselves in a detailed picture of the precise actions that will attain our objective. We master the means of success so completely that we execute them spontaneously at their optimal moment. While samurais pictured themselves wielding a sword to kill an adversary, our goal is establishing harmony with them so we can explore ideas together. In our own mind means we can confidently run a mental movie of just how we will do this, a beginning to end strategy that obtains our results. Responses arising from our random conditioning are likely to fail. From the suggestions here and from personal experience, we develop a plan and continually improve it. A key element of our plan is entirely inside us, adopting an attitude that conveys ease and safety. In a glance at the qualities we each display, we know at once whether we welcome each other. Through the tightness in our smile, the energy of our hello, how our voice drops off or rises, and how our eyes meet theirs. In the prior chapter, we explained how nonverbal cues fill out this message. We supply a deeper level of comfort by focusing on a quality in the other we can genuinely respect. A man in the construction business I knew was ill at ease around a builder he often had to meet. There were 10 things he did not like about the man, he told me, but over time he altered their relationship with a single thought. He could genuinely respect that the man knew how to make money. As he sustained a positive feeling based on that view alone, the tension between the two steadily diminished, and they eventually became friends. To apply this, consider someone you know who has ideas that offend you. But wishing to try respect, you are puzzled at what deserves it. Scour your knowledge of them for anything you can appreciate. Hard worker, involved parent, physical skills. Maybe they suffered abuse, loss, poor education, health challenges, or personal trials that elicit your empathy. You've really had some challenges. I can respect that. An effective way to do this is finding a strength within the very thing that annoys you. If they are conspiracy-minded, you say, you really don't want others to manipulate you or society, do you? I can respect that. With anger, they want to increase the influence of their ideas. You can respect that. If they vent a wacky idea, you can respect that they let you know how they feel. A trait with many constructive applications, even though it can be misdirected. You focus on the positive quality instead of its misuse. George, you might say, you're able to express these things you feel. I can tell that they matter a lot to you. Some people will not let out their ideas, so they are harder to talk to, but you are really open. Some ideas are important enough to you that you want to pass them on, and I can respect that. Every word you say is true. If instead they hold ideas inside, you respect what is there. You probably feel deeply about these things, but you know others have different ideas and don't feel required to correct them. I can respect that. We uncover a positive quality, express it in common terms, and show sincerity in our tone of voice and demeanor. We might focus on their way with words, emotional presence, strength of conviction, boldness, analytic ability, imagination, attention to details, or loyalty. We respect the quality or thought displayed or presumed, and by maintaining that viewpoint, we connect with them in a way only we control. An elementary signal of respect is never to interrupt others. We always pause our sentence when another tries to speak and wait until they are done. Leaving a silent moment after they conclude suggests, I want to make sure you said what you wanted to say. A primary factor in people's happiness is the esteem they receive from others, which we first convey non-verbally by respect. Besides absorbing others' attitude toward us, we also constantly assess, am I safe with this person? Which we determine first by noticing similarities and differences. Similarities convey more safety and differences less. People separate into classes, tribes, and identity groups by how they match ethnicity, apparel, possessions, religious affiliation, values, and political stands to decide whether even to allow personal contact. But while we may worry that we are too different to connect with those we want to reach, subtle cues still can do that. A pleasant tone of voice and smile, for instance, can quickly bridge across even an obvious difference like ethnicity. A personal incident brought home to me the power of just the sound of one's voice. A man moved into our apartment complex with his family, and we would occasionally wave to each other, remaining at a distance. One day, however, I heard only the sound of his voice as he spoke to his daughter, and I instantly thought he and I could be friends. Our subconscious logs in micro features of similarity, like tone, pitch, accent, and pace of speech. It checks out body position, eye level, gestures, vocabulary, and even breathing rate. We stand like they do, lean like they lean, fold our arms and legs like they do, tilt our head, nod, speak in their kind of phrases, match though moderating their voice, and use their vocabulary. If we forget and revert to argument, we need to slap ourselves upside the head, stop at once, restore our feeling of respect, and align our qualities with theirs. If we insist instead on speaking in our identity group lingo, others hear, you and I are really different. Thorough listening. Next in our strategy is to listen thoroughly. Our attempt to do that is the best assurance that the other will talk to us again. One day I was conversing with a woman who had an opposing viewpoint. She dismissed checking evidence, condemned media distortions, defended the president, refused to talk politics, assured me that I knew more than she did, and strolled off. I had focused on careful listening, speaking little, and understanding her emotional entrainment, so that upsets you. And the motive organizing her narrative you seem to want. The amiable conclusion to the experience hinted, however, that her need was not about ideas, but to be listened to. We do more than just hear another. We bring a crucial attitude. In his classic 1936 book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie explained the importance of having a genuine interest in others. We may grant this as a good idea, but easily assume they are not interesting, so why try? We can choose instead to become fascinated at how they form their mind, as we noted above. No matter how incorrect their ideas, the very form of their thinking warrants lasting curiosity. With a positive, respectful tone, we open the picture of the world they see, whatever its ink-blot abnormalities and lacunae. Ask them a half-dozen questions and follow their train of thought carefully. Understanding them does not require agreeing. So, Alan, I haven't been able to talk much with someone who believes like you do and am curious. Can you remember how you started thinking that way? And what happened then? And what happened then? So to you it seems that is your key point and is not in your picture. By trying also to express in our own words their feelings about an issue, we help them relax and focus on the thinking behind the feeling. When they are upset about something and we understand, they have less need to be upset. As we grasp a piece here and there, it can help to summarize their words thus far, perhaps even breaking into their monologue to do so. People rarely object to that because it assures them that they are getting their point across. We can highlight key elements. Their argument hangs together for you. You want their plan to work out. It bothers you that with the information you have, you believe you see in it. From this situation you want to turn out. You hope for the best. Your aim in explaining the ideas appears to be you think this is headed. So about that point, it's important to you that you're saying you feel about. You put these two things together this way. A distinction can matter. Those just beginning to summarize others' ideas may parrot back their exact words, which can irritate people so that they respond with, "Yes, that's what I said." Instead, we use our own words to express their meaning. As our insight develops, we will notice key points implied but not yet explained, or synthesize a long explanation into an efficient summary. In counseling, I've often found my grasp of a client's issue change significantly through such listening. People may inadequately understand what bothers them, which is why they sought counseling, and work their way toward a perspective with our help. When they compress down to nothing a fact we assume is significant, we acknowledge it objectively. So that point doesn't matter to you at all. And notice the detail that does govern for them. We can elicit their intent. What outcome do you want from this? Where do you see this headed? What is your interest about this? Our careful listening has two significant effects. It informs us about the speaker and also enables them to draw together ideas they otherwise might not. If we periodically summarize their thought, we provide them a fresh platform for their next concept. Solidifying their thinking thus far helps them direct their attention to its further implications. Jacob Bronowski explained the role of a sentence like this. The purpose of a sentence is to resolve the ambiguity left over from the previous sentence. A helpful feature of our summary is phrasing it as a statement rather than as a question. Our response, "You're saying that," gives them a choice of politely continuing their thought, changing the subject, or turning our statement into a question they answer. They choose among options available to them and remain in charge of their train of thought. When instead we ask a question, "Are you saying that?" we bring them onto our ground. asking a question presumes that we want them to fill a gap in our thinking. Even if the question is about them, answering may move them into our thought process and away from their own. We may find ourselves taking responsibility for their problem, which has many downsides. To develop their own thinking most fully, they need to stay within it at whatever pace it evolves. It can be hard to appreciate the significance of this seemingly small difference, asking questions versus summarizing, without experiencing it. In counseling, when I felt clients could benefit from listening better, I would practice with them using excerpts from Tom Gordon's book, Parent Effectiveness Training. One of them, the Danny sequence, illustrated the importance of following both verbal and nonverbal cues. In one of Gordon's classes was a mother whose 6-year-old son had resisted bedtime for 2 years. She had asked every question she could think of, exhausted problem solving, scolding, and pleading, and finally decided to try active listening, as Gordon taught it, referred to here as summarizing. Immediately afterward, she wrote down the dialogue that occurred. The narrative begins with Danny in bed. Since his physical state is part of the message he is communicating, his mother listens to it, notices it accurately, and says, "Comfy?" Danny wants to talk rather than rest, and she responds to questions about a relative and other issues. Rather than answering each question directly, she tries first to summarize its content. You want to know about... When he sniffles, she notices and mirrors the nonverbal cue with stuffy nose and asks if he needs the stuffy nose medicine. She repeatedly notices and summarizes his changes of topic, resolutely refusing to direct the exchange or introduce an idea of her own, but instead returns back to him the apparent meaning of his words and nonverbal cues to that point. This effort to follow the changing thread of his thinking steadily relaxes Danny. Conscious of managing his own train of thought and completely comfortable at last, he abruptly changes the subject. "Oh, I wish you didn't have to breathe through your nose when you sleep," he declares wistfully. Instead of immediately correcting him, she cautiously summarizes his content. "You think you have to..." He reasserts his certainty about this and concludes emphatically with, "You gotta breathe." It strikes Danny's mother that for 2 years he has resisted sleep from fear he would die if his nose were blocked. Restraining the impact of this realization on herself, the mother explains how if his nose is closed, his mouth opens automatically. They discuss this until he is completely reassured and goes to sleep peacefully with no more problems afterward. The lesson of this experience is that often key information is not consciously accessible. Danny's fear of death so occluded his mind that he could not face it until his mother pried open a safe pathway into it. She respectfully stayed inside his thought stream as best she discerned it, presenting back to him what she understood him to be revealing. Having no idea where this was headed, she concluded that Danny himself had to find the path, and she could only help him maintain the thread of his own thinking. For those burdened by distressing emotions, we help them by supplying safety and careful listening and following their thought process. People face vulnerable feelings only gradually, and at first, like Danny, cannot even find an idea they recognize later. We reflect back to them each tentative step they take, summarizing their message up to the present helps their brain work more efficiently. As noted above, when confronted with conflict, it is momentarily off balance and must work harder to right itself. It prefers moving from one idea that makes sense to another that makes sense. A yes to another yes. One easy thing and then another and another. Thoughtful summarizing sustains this flow, while a correction is like inserting a glitch into their electronics. When we would like them to listen to us, for those who do not know how, we can lead them through the steps. At first, when we express a point, they may ignore it, assert their own idea, or respond in a way missing the essence of our message. They listen poorly. We can describe what just happened. You spoke after I did, but I would really like to know that you grasped what I said. Could you just tell me what I was saying to you? You pause, look at them, and wait. If they cannot answer, it means they were thinking about their idea and not yours. And you draw them back to yours. You ask, could I say it again? And wait for their nod. Repeat your point and once more invite them. Could you tell me what I was saying to you? They may then attempt it, or with an appropriate response, show they grasped your point so that you and they can continue the conversation. Repeating this process with you on a few occasions, they become comfortable with summarizing your ideas, a key for being able to build ideas together. Using questions. A series of questions shows we are receptive. They can throw it all at us and we welcome it because we want to know their views. 6 about core life issues open many conversational threads. What things gave you joy when you were young? What things give you joy now? What are you good at? What things have made you who you are? What have others seen in you? What decisions have you made about your life? As we show respect for their world, they will reveal more of it. If it is true that everyone has a book in them, we welcome hearing their book. When a negative tone emerges, again, we ask a question about the least negative thing they say and continue doing so until the conversation turns positive. We can work the edges of touchy issues with respectful questions. Where do you see your life going? What do you worry about? What are you angry about? Week by week, do you have fears of anything? What do you think could solve that? How do you think people need to work together? How certain are you that your views are correct? What information would be useful to you? What information could bring our views closer together? What do you think of the current political climate? How perfect do you think our country is? Do you feel entitled to certain things just by being an American? Should everyone feel the same way? Do you think the country is in danger? Where do you see it headed? Do you think conspiracies threaten us? Do you think the world is going to burn? And if so, are you okay with that? Are you around people of a different race, religion, or ethnicity? Do you have problems with them? Do you think people should stay in their own class? Are you drawn to confident people? Does society need someone smart and strong giving orders? Do you know when others are telling you what you want to hear? With questions, we express respectful interest in others. When I was young, I once heard my parents discuss how to handle a social situation. A distant relative reputed to be cold and aloof was passing through town, and it was expected that they invite him to dinner. My father finally said, "Let's just draw him out." That evening, their conversation continued late into the night, and afterward my parents exclaimed admiringly at what an interesting person he was, with many unique qualities. They drew him out, an experience we can provide for anyone. After initiating another's flow of ideas with a series of questions, we turn to summarizing when insight could help them solve a problem, manage an unhappy feeling, resolve a relationship, put assorted ideas in order, or find common ground. We solidify understanding up to the moment by stating it concisely. So you're saying that, encouraging them to continue. They may repeat a point several times before exhausting their emphasis on it. Though a few sentences might express it, high emotional investment in an issue may move them to say it again. They may restate it from not knowing if they got it across to us, or may rarely have had anyone listen to them carefully. They may enjoy our attention or feel no need to refine their views. Each time they express it, we continue to summarize it in different words if we can. About a given point, they may be certain that this direction is correct, but they have a reason. Maybe they trusted someone and are pained to admit they were misled. Maybe they follow their social group, are drawn to forceful people, join others with similar feelings, or overplay a fact. We follow what they say, discern its origin, uncover their motive, and notice how their feelings color their thoughts, tease out personal elements so we can lay them to rest and begin a thoughtful exchange. Our turn to respond. As they wind down their ideas, conversational rhythm suggests a chance for us to talk, a shift most of us learn by taking turns in kindergarten. But rather than interrupting, we ask permission to speak. The reason, again, is how the brain processes experience. Inconsistencies cause it to seize up momentarily, and changing who talks presents such a challenge. So we waste time declaring ideas the other does not want to hear. We say respectfully, "I think I understand what you are telling me. I've never had anyone explain it to me that way. Would it be okay for me to tell the picture I see?" If they say no, we nod politely and accept it. And if they consent, do not use our turn negatively. "I've put up with this person's nutty ideas and now I can blast them." The more uncomfortable we make them, the less they can hear from us. In explaining, we want to be able to go to whatever depth they need. But a common challenge is expressing our broad understanding. In the last 10 years, you may have spent 1,000 hours learning about the world. But if all you can explain tops out in 3 minutes, what do you expect? Passive understanding may not turn into expressive capability. Just now you are the only person in the world who might change this person's thinking, and you present only 3 connected minutes worth of ideas? Really? You need a reasonable, accurate, and comprehensive narrative ready. Paint a picture and color it in. We practice by explaining our picture. There is no shortcut. We put in order what we want to say, grasp details, describe them so they make sense, and develop a toolkit of information to draw on at will. Yes, the earth is round. Yes, pollution kills living things. Human activity changes the climate. Our system generates inequality, and injustice and manipulation occur here and here. We need to have ready an inclusive picture of nation and world that begins in fundamental values, what well-being consists of, a handful of beliefs that 80 to 90% of the people in the world agree on. We can draw on our Constitution, Bill of Rights, and the United Nations Universal Declaration on Human Rights for principles to affirm everywhere. We organize our presentation around issues relevant to our listeners, however. Some points may express our indignation, but we continually need to weigh competing values. We cannot apply a value effectively less we understand it. Freedom, for instance, figures into many policies of civilization. That government should use can't and have to sparingly. Freedom implies personal responsibility. Happiness cannot be guaranteed, but its pursuit can be made easier. And integrity matters. People have an innate drive to provide for their loved ones, and we can minimize barriers to their effort so that self-enhancement operates with fairness. A measure of civilization is how power treats weakness. A majority must not abuse a minority, nor a ruling minority abuse a disempowered majority. The cell of society, one person, should be able to participate in its activity. We judge such issues by weighing the values involved, such as by how freedom interplays with other factors. We need to supply the quality of thinking, enabling policymakers to balance rights, duties, limitations, and opportunities. Our message that change is necessary shifts eventually to the specifics needed. In Chapter 11, we explore in more detail how to expand our ability to explain. Writing it. While we tend to let emotion color our spoken words, writing encourages more objectivity. In a conversation, we can ask, could we write down our issue? The other may shrug, but nothing stops us from doing it ourselves. Wait a minute, would you? You put a lot in that last point, and I'd like to track it. We seize our clipboard, write down the other's words verbatim, and read them back. Is this how you want to express that? We change the wording as they prefer, write our own response, and let the other read what we have written. Even seeing our contrasting assertions together stimulates the mind to synthesize them. We can continue doing that in successive discussions, steadily returning to information that might resolve differences. The principal outcome we want is the other's agreement to seek evidence, which is typically written. When our person declares a sketchy assertion as fact, we can respond with, "That's interesting. I wonder if it's true." We rise, say, "Let's check that out." Retrieve our laptop, go online, and ask, "How should we phrase that point?" By agreeing on the form of the search, they help gather evidence. If our first attempt does not turn up what we want, we discuss how to restate it, emphasizing fact-finding. How do we check out this idea differently? When our search opens other angles, we note them. Here's an interesting point further down. What do you think of this? We never argue about an issue that can be settled by evidence. Better to delay until we have probative data in hand. The committee is gathering information on that, aren't they? I am sure that will come out, so let's wait on it. If that's true, it will have tremendous consequences. I hadn't heard the point you mentioned. Maybe we could look that up. You and I are guessing about what the facts are, so maybe we could just find out the facts. Meeting needs. Think for a minute how you show someone you care about them. You use your knowledge about them to meet their needs. We can think this way about canvassing. First, we commit as a group to mastering current issues. We assign each of our members to gather critical data about a single topic, its history, implications, and possible solutions. One person might take on health care, and others gun control, racism, social security, economic inequality, education, daycare, climate change, criminal justice, immigration, housing, unions, etc. We need a resident expert for every topic, and as a group amass the range of ideas with which to respond to nearly any concern a voter might bring up. Knowing we have comprehensive resources easy to draw on, in canvassing we can show up at someone's door, listen carefully, write down enough to track their viewpoint, identify concerns that matter most to them, promise to get the answers they need, and return later to share them. Our knock a second time on their door affirms that we value them, that we consider their needs and ideas significant. The uninterested, undecided people may lack the interest to think about issues. Recall James Comey's revelation shortly before the 2016 election that the FBI was investigating Hillary Clinton. Though his comments violated the prosecutor's rule, indict or shut up, and contained no substance related to the nation's well-being, it was widely credited with tipping swing state votes. Once surrendering rational assessment of clues whose significance they cannot fathom, people are easily propagandized, affected by spin, lies, emotional appeals, packaging, promotion, innuendo, and October surprises. They confine their attention to personal needs, paycheck to paycheck, and believe that the political process ignores them and operates in a world alien to theirs. They may lack hope that their country heads in the right direction and that their tiny cooperation matters. We are at their door to give them hope. Of all groups, they are the most likely to appreciate our detailed, comprehensive narrative. They need a different story than the one they currently experience. The mistaken. The mistaken thinking often causes a problem in our life, but once we realize that changing our thinking could solve the problem, we change it. This simple model describes growing up. We give up childish thinking that does not work in our adult life. Because we gather so many assumptions about the world from those around us, when our social group is wrong about a problem, we absorb that viewpoint in whole gulps without realizing we do. Especially when a mistake's impact is not on us, but on others, we have less motivation to correct it, but instead stay in the flow of our group. In talking with a voter, we can draw on this human pattern by 1. Naming a problem. 2. Noting how it affects them or their values. 3. Identifying the attitudes that sustain the problem. And 4. How better thinking could solve it. Here are some examples. So, Anne, you think health care is a national problem, right? You have adequate health insurance yourself. If it were taken away, would you have a problem? You remember that the Republicans came within one vote of canceling the entire Affordable Care Act. Would that have affected you? Do you think it's time for a nationwide system that includes everyone, like so many other countries have? Do you have clean water here, or do you have to buy it? Water gets polluted mostly because society and manufacturing plants have discharged their waste into the environment without cleaning up after themselves. The result has been global warming and degraded water and earth. Do you think it's time we put on our big boy pants and clean up after ourselves? How is education in your neighborhood? Did you know that 30 million Americans cannot read a book written at an 8th grade level? Do you think that some of our national problems are worse just because we don't care enough about educating everyone? Is it time to invest more in children, their teachers, schools, and college for all? Anyone in your family working minimum wage job? Hard to pay all the bills on that income, isn't it? Did you know that a minimum wage job used to be able to support a family of 3, but it hasn't been raised nationally for decades? Do you think it's time for working people to get a bigger share of U.S. productivity? We name a problem, connect it to the person as directly as we can, identify the poor thinking behind it, and then the better thinking that solves it. A group project could be to develop effective responses on this model for the 24 issues encountered most often, and with group practice help everyone become fluent with them. The connecting. Many do not think logically, assembling a conclusion, instead using reasons and evidence, but rather think connectedly. Instead of analyzing, they associate. One idea attaches somewhat randomly to another to form a picture that to us may seem like a Picasso abstract. We could compare it to crossing a stream by jumping on rocks. The logical mind proceeds in an orderly line, one rock after another, while the connected jumps haphazardly this way and that. The fact of their sequence satisfies them rather than reasonable steps within it. Leaps past contrary evidence are incidental, and they acknowledge no obligation to be consistent. While they do not welcome challenges, 3 approaches can help guide them. We can ask them a question about the least negative thing they say, and from whatever their answer, continue doing so as noted above. We can also clarify purpose. What is it you want? What outcome do you see from this? If what you say is true, where do you see it going? What is its eventual result? A third response is alternating talking time. Could we do this? You talk, and then I talk, okay? Agreeing even to this can help, but we grasp each other's meaning even better by adding another feature. Why don't you talk for 1 minute? I summarize what you say. You correct my summary until you know I understand you. Then we switch. I talk for a minute. You summarize my views, my ideas. I correct your summary until I'm satisfied you understand me, and we switch again. We speak and summarize each other for as long as we want. If they agree to do that, the critical change is that they express our idea in their words. Even disagreeing with us, they now grasp the basic form of our idea, perhaps for the first time, and then can begin to account for it inside their thinking silo. The accepting. Facing someone who firmly believes in untruth, e.g., climate change is a Chinese hoax, and accepts propaganda and lies, it may help to know how unquestioning acceptance occurs. The brain must exert more effort to recognize and reject a false idea than accept one as true. Drawing from MRI studies of the brain done in 2009, neuroscientist Bobby Azarian explains that the brain is activated more and longer while disbelieving, because believing draws on fewer cognitive resources. It, quote, is simply less work for the brain and therefore often favored. Accepting what we are told is the default state of the human brain because doubt takes effort. Belief, on the other hand, comes easily, end quote, alerting us to its evolutionary benefit as elders teach children what to believe. Azarian cites this to explain why evangelicals may be more easily duped than others. Quote, for Christian fundamentalists, being taught to suppress critical thinking begins at a very early age, unquote. The brain's vulnerability to aggressive indoctrination sets up, quote, the perfect storm for gullibility. Due to the brain's neuroplasticity, or ability to be sculpted by lived experiences, evangelicals literally become hardwired to believe far-fetched statements, end quote. With this conditioning, quote, healthy skepticism and rational thought are not properly developed. This inevitably leads to a greater susceptibility to lying and gaslighting by manipulative politicians and greater suggestibility in general, end quote. To respond to this need, we may have to become more significant in people's lives and build gradually on values in common. Our careful listening can help them put words to concerns they usually suppress, since others around them do not welcome a deeper search of their thinking. The limited. Many we would like to reach think little about those who are poor or immigrant or are of a different race, religion, gender, or nationality, or have medical, educational, or occupational needs. They regard the experience of people in such categories as just a fact of life, how the world is arranged. It is as though we lived in India, and centuries of the caste system channeled us into accepting our place in our own caste, and others are simply in theirs. Explaining to them it shouldn't be this way can seem unconvincing because grooves of meaning are so deep. Our challenge is to find a groove in their mind that cuts in a different direction and try to build on it. The most promising is through an issue that matters to them emotionally, such as concern for a family member. We bridge through it to broader issues, first helping them notice important feelings, and then their stand on an issue. So you have a daughter in college and you love her very much, right? What if she came home on vacation, brought with her a friend she really cared about, and you discovered the friend was Hispanic? You don't think you have anything against Hispanics, but discover a tightness inside you, and it seems to you that it isn't quite right for your daughter to have this friend. You wonder, is she legal? Can you imagine that happening? Okay then, that resistance you have to the Hispanic girl is how you have been trained to think. You put a boundary around your world and set Hispanics outside it. So here's the thing. Your daughter really cares about this friend. Is your daughter's feelings for her reason enough for you to stretch your own feelings and welcome her wholeheartedly? For many issues that affect others, those around you have taught you that a lot of people and living things in the world should not matter to you. And you've accepted many of their rules. Isn't that so? Maybe it's time for a fresh look at them, for whether they align with values you want to uphold, values you would be proud to have carved into your headstone when you die. The competitive. Presented with an idea, you and I may initially focus on its positive qualities, but some begin differently. They find it safer to examine an idea's flaws first, believing it helps them avoid mistakes or spot others' manipulation, so that their first responses appear oppositional and competitive. Since they may sincerely want better ideas, we can acknowledge and appreciate what they say. Though drawn to an idea's benefits ourselves, we eventually must face its flaws, and opponents will help us at that. We try to understand their deeper motivation and work with it. They may also welcome competition itself, however, enjoying back and forth retorts with only an incidental search for truth. A clue may be their grin accompanying their response, which we note. You seem to enjoy this back and forth, is that right? While we do not want to encourage such competition, others may grasp our point, not want to admit it out of pride, and appear to resist it. They need to forget that they heard it from us and reinvent it later as their own. The denier. A new study compares two strategies for talking to someone who denies widely accepted scientific facts, such as the existence of climate change or the need for vaccination. One approach is called topic rebuttal, in which we counteract falsehoods with accurate information. While this is effective, it can depend on us knowing considerable information about the issue. With the other approach, technique rebuttal, we unmask ways a denier misleads others. Both methods work, but we can use the latter with less knowledge about the problem and more alertness to the person's behavior. We can point out cherry-picking details, demanding impossible levels of evidence, relying on scientific outliers, failing to weigh risk against benefit, attacking people instead of addressing facts, and so on. Our prior book lists 21 common manipulative strategies we can call out. The opinionated. To help someone realize they rely on opinion, we can offer gentle, summary feedback, and then modify our comments toward evidence. Note the shifting emphasis in this series of responses. You feel absolutely certain about that. You have a strong opinion about that. That's a forceful viewpoint. You feel deeply about that. You've really settled your views on that point. Let's see, I guess that's your opinion, right? If you had to stake your life on that being true, do you think you would? People's opinion is really only as solid as what it's based on. Should I just adopt what you say, or am I safer asking you for evidence? For me to believe you, I'd really like evidence to help me make up my own mind. Think of reversing our positions. If I had a strong opinion I wanted you to accept, would you want evidence about it? For me to convince someone else of what you say, what evidence should I be able to tell them? What evidence could we look up together? Many assume they gain respect with a strong opinion about something, though their own commitment to it is shallow, and they have not thought through its links to more enduring values. When we help them claim their deeper principles, they may be able to change their opinions easily. The moody. People can be mired in a mood, like anxiousness, anger, resentment, depression, frustration, indignation, defensiveness, and so on. A mood is the body's generalization from prior experiences to expect the same thing again. But the physical effect is not consciously controlled. In a threatening situation, pupils may spontaneously dilate, heart races, hands sweat, stomach tenses, and the mind narrows its attention around the threat. A fearful mood replays its symptoms just to get ready in case the threat returns. Because we do not manage this reactive state deliberately, like we pick up a coffee cup, it limits our options for communication. We access another's rational thinking only after we alter their mood. Upon noticing the strength of the reactive state, we help it relax, release tension, and return to a positive condition. When it hinders reasonableness, we try to change it before expecting to consider ideas together. The racist. While an enormous volume of information about racism warrants our study, it may help to understand a basic feature of it. With racism, humans overdo a pattern among sentient creatures. To understand how to treat others, we use ourselves as a baseline. With others like us, we know what to do. If we are an orca, we cluster in a pod. If we are a locust, we form a cloud. If we are a wolf, we find our place in a hierarchy. Or if a tiger, assert our territory. The group we regard as ours operates on a common plan, and we align with it. We humans choose as friends people we think are like us, and apply different rules to those we believe are not, excluding them from the benefits of our group. We may believe even that an outgroup deserves our hostility or can be manipulated to provide us gain. Because chickens, pigs, and calves are so different from us, for instance, our culture in general is apparently willing to subject them to horrifying life conditions, regarding them simply as a source of profit. About people, the more different we think they are, the less secure we feel around them. The broader the boundary we want between us, and the more prone we are to treat them as we please. Classifying them as totally different, as completely not ours, we are more willing to damage them, dissolve the social compact, and engage in oppression and intergroup violence. In the Holocaust, at least 6 million Jews died, and perhaps double that number. While we should work at changing such attitudes one person at a time whenever possible, society's interest is first to survive and then to optimize. For the first need, the crucial point is the rule of law, equitable treatment for everyone, regardless of race, color, creed, or our feeling toward them. We explore the point. Do you know what rule of law means? Society tries to figure out fair standards for common situations that apply to everyone, so that people don't just kill each other over every disagreement. Do you see why this is important, we examine applications. So even though you personally feel distant from those of another race, religion, or nationality, could you still treat them fairly? Could you say then that slavery was wrong, and that lynchings and the harassment of blacks after the Civil War were wrong? That unfairness to blacks today is wrong? Fairness based on the rule of law invites a different stance on many issues. We can uncover racism's malicious influence on surrogate issues like zoning, education, demographic shifts, gerrymandering, multicultural initiatives, immigration welfare, and voting rights. The self-deceived. Some resist the implications of their own behavior. They rely on government aid, yet vote for a party that promises to cut social support programs. Some of the reddest counties in the nation have the highest reliance on government aid. A New York Times investigation noted, quote, of the 10 states in which government transfers account for the largest share of income, 7 voted for Mr. Trump. Speaking to the economic and social anxieties of blue-collar white voters over immigration, trade, and demographic change, Mr. Trump has championed tax cuts for the well-to-do, paired with benefit cuts for the struggling voters in his base. End quote. We draw from the strategies explained above to establish rapport, and when others are open to discussion, we ask how they benefit from government services. Republicans typically try to cut back. Here's a possible narrative. I'm sure you want government to be effective, right? So, is anyone in your family on Social Security? Is it important for them, do you think? How about Medicare or Medicaid? Are neighbors on disability, employment payments? Need pensions or food stamps? Do industries in your area get subsidies? Any farming there? Some areas prosper from a government installation, like a military base or a large federal facility. Do they believe they benefit from clean air, clean water, alcohol treatment, medical treatment, a group home, transportation, decent roads, and schools? Does all this money flowing toward you match your view of government? Would you like it to go somewhere else? Or are you glad that you are not forced to get your water from mud puddles? It is hard for me to understand why you would support something directly opposing the benefits you receive. Could you explain that? See if this is the reason. Your real feelings might show up when you think about others. It might bother you when people, quote, depend on a government handout, unquote. Do you possibly object to that so deeply you don't notice it applies to you? You rely on government as much as people you resent, but are ashamed of it? Is that part of the story? If we don't face what we are doing, how will that turn out? Relatives and neighbors. Vet Wife, a Daily Kos subscriber, shared her approach to family members who passionately support the president. She begins by initiating a personal conversation. Quote, I want to ask you a few questions and I need a reasonable answer. Why do you care so much about a man you do not know, who you will never meet, and doesn't know you from a speck on the wall, and yet hurts people who don't share your political mindset, who have always been there for you? She reminds them, 1, who has benefited them in the past, who they relied on and will continue to matter to them. 2, that those they have chosen to support do not care about them, will never be part of their life, nor attend their funeral, make them happy, nor comfort them. 3, that they are being manipulated, deceived, and brainwashed. 4, and why then do they make that choice? She reports that people typically answer, I don't know, to which she responds, quote, I then said, wake up. People who are capable of this kind of division and causing this much chaos, especially with family members, cannot be good for you, and they will never know you threw away love and compassion and goodwill for a vote. It is your life. You can live it or destroy it, but you need to know you can live by yourself. But it takes 6 people to carry you out once you are dead. Will DJT send his cabinet or come himself to rescue you or bail you out? You just might want to think about that and see what is happening. You don't have to change your ideology or even listen to the other side, but you are throwing your life away on people with rhetoric who would not give you the time of day. End quote. What distinguishes this approach from arguing issues is the focus on how people's actions affect their most basic values. What life relationships are significant? What justifies behavior? How we can hurt people who have helped us and share details of our lives? Who we put first in our life and why? What can motivate sudden changes in our actions? How we can commit to people who do not know nor care about us? And what constitutes messed up or odd behavior? The strategy presumes an existing relationship that welcomes people speaking freely, while conversations with others might proceed through stages. We first become eligible just to talk personally. Acquaintances become friends by spending about 50 hours together. And once others believe we deserve their attention, we can begin to work through differences. We might first find avenues where basic liking can develop, such as in a single zone like gardening, children, sports, or pets. Opening a subject that could be contentious, we listen curiously. We are not just a dry street receiving water from a fire hydrant, but rather seek meaning as this person forms it. We preoccupy our mind with them, set aside our own agenda, and immerse in their train of thought, clarifying and linking ideas rather than contesting or correcting. So, this feels urgent to you. We recognize and affirm the influence of their feelings on their thinking. Remember the circuitous route it took for Danny to face his problem. We can inquire how they formed their ideas. How did you come to believe? So your early experience with your brother affected you. We look at their needs. You watched as happened, and it hit you hard. Important people in your life felt this way and wouldn't accept disagreement. It made sense to you at the time to believe this. We appreciate how life experiences influenced them. Once they enjoy connecting with us and we ask their permission to respond, they are likely to let us. Concluding a conversation, we can say, well, I've got to go, but one last point I'd like to mention is we offer a solid fact for them to consider and then depart. Hearing a false statement, we can leave with, what if that isn't true? When people cannot agree on what is true, an intermediate objective is veridicality, aligning our thinking with available sources while knowing others could arise later. Assessing degrees of certainty is essential for objectivity and stops us from stretching evidence too far. If our confidence level is 7 on a 1 to 10 scale, we stay at 7 and do not declare it a 10. Bridging political differences. Simple practices can improve a discussion with a political opponent. We first try to engage with them as a we before opening differences. Prior sections offer options for doing so. Both of us need a sense for what we have in common. Explicit identification with a party divides us even when we might agree on an issue. So we look past political identity to focus on shared values. If someone insists accusingly, for instance, "Are you a socialist?" we sidestep general labels and ask for specifics. These general terms have always confused me. Do you mean with programs like Medicare and Social Security? Is that what you mean? Or is it the same as humanistic capitalism? Or is it like big corporations getting subsidies? If they cannot give you examples, they have just adopted others' generalizations. People inclined to direct attacks may have a constructive intent. In their mind, they are defending a person, loyalty their motive, calling out a mistake, or asserting a value. We can find out what they ultimately want, how things will be different if their view prevails, what would satisfy them. This parallels a common marriage problem, the reverse effect, where a partner intends one outcome. Their behavior gets the opposite, but they are too invested in their approach to notice. The remedy is to clarify the actual effect of their behavior. People may adopt a strategy without realizing how little they know about an issue. If we can show they misunderstand and that we have an alternate explanation, they are more likely to change their mind. Facts help us counteract even strong convictions. We can say, we both have our opinions, and I'd like to agree with you, but eventually people go with the facts. So could we look up these points? We can suggest we both adopt a skeptical position to assess an issue afresh as though neither of us knew anything about it, and agree to seek accurate statements. Perhaps there is a problem we would both like to solve, and we can weigh our respective views by how well they do so. Often people arguing view a problem much differently. We can notice their terms and use them ourselves. Issues they refer to are likely to affect us all, even if we employ different words, such as for patriotism, security, authority, loyalty, strength, independence, tradition, leadership, power, and freedom. Using our opponent's vocabulary to describe our own goals is harmonizing. We can listen for a key word the other uses to describe their views and then build our own sentences around it. We can examine our differences by how they align with long-standing beliefs, such as principles from our nation's founding. Changes are more likely to occur step by step, so that people gradually become comfortable with a change in perspective. Emotional entrainment. A cartoon by David Cypress expresses a common problem. A teacher confronts a student who has just put a math problem on the blackboard. 7 times 5 equals 75. The student says, "It may be wrong, but it's how I feel." As early as we begin to think, we tend to place emotional impressions ahead of objective evidence. Unlike school, where a teacher can insist on a correct answer, in the adult world we negotiate admittance into another's mind, and they can refuse to let us in unless we meet their criteria. We knock on a door and they decide to open it or not. Whatever form their certainty may take, it can deflect feedback, diminish respect, generate emotional distance, undermine friendships and connections, and worst of all, can shatter communication, rendering us speechless and threaten our balance. We inherently trust that ideas have meaning and solidity, but when we confront a fantasy in another's mind, we cannot rely on ordinary rational exchange. Historian Will Durant drew a sobering conclusion from centuries of excess due to religious motives. Quote, "Intolerance is the natural concomitant of strong faith. Tolerance grows only when faith loses certainty. Certainty is murderous." End quote. While we can qualify his observation by noting many non-lethal certainties, threat does arise from those we feel confident imposing on others. We begin to resolve this problem first by self-awareness. If we are upset, it means we push against the wrong door, that our assertion is not working. We have abandoned our versatility and can take the hint to change our approach instead of projecting blame on another. Addressing someone who is in a negative state, we attend to what we control and optimize it for best results. We model constructive communication. We have no wish to worsen connections, so if we are unsure what to do, we calm ourselves and try to understand them. Shelve our intent to change their thinking and just sustain a positive exchange. We listen more, clarify their view, and make points of agreement, and note points of agreement. Change becomes a long-range possibility instead of a short-term objective. We take time to develop trust and easy presence so we can offer each other evidence and reasoning and know it will be received. We can acknowledge contrasting starting points. I understand that you see it one way and I see it another. That's fine. Everyone has a right to their opinion, whatever it is. Maybe sometime we might want to think through ideas together, but it's okay just to have different views. The human race is filled with people who have their own opinion. Note the sandwich, a hint that someday we might think together, embedded between two affirmations of their right to their opinion. Accepting that reduces stress. It assures them we are not going to attack them just for being different and relieve some of the force behind their defensiveness. Telling someone you are wrong, on the other hand, presumes that it matters to them to hear that, as though we believe if they just know that I think they are wrong, they will respond better. Instead, we could say, would you like to work together toward X? We can begin with common values. You and I agree on enhancing family life, right? Or we want to keep living things alive, don't we? We can find out the person's experience that generated their feeling. Someone misled and deceived, for instance, might focus on others' trustworthiness. Resentment might arise in one taken advantage of. Loyalty might count high for one enduring disloyalty, and so on. We can hear their whole explanation and extend the implications of their experience to humanity. What if everyone reacted as they do? What response might be better overall? Many have a purpose they do not express in words, and as we have emphasized above, we can help them by drawing it out. Where do you believe this is headed? What would you like to see come of this? From that comment, it looks like you want to happen. How will things be when they are just the way you want them? If that happens, what do you think are the consequences? Emotional entrainment matters also because many are unhappy, which undermines their judgment and motivation. Self-awareness grows after self-acceptance, the belief that our inner world is at least okay. When we look inside, we should not immediately be seized by feelings of guilt, inadequacy, self-consciousness, or other negatives. With such conditions circulating in us, we think, I can't go there, and may avoid information we need to face. A common response when our own behavior troubles us is projection. Disliking what we find in ourselves, we prefer not to face it, and to relieve our discomfort, apply it to another, project it onto someone else. The content of the thought remains the same, but we change its subject. The suspicion that I could be annoying changes to you are annoying, or that I could be unreasonable becomes you are unreasonable. One person's criticisms of another can offer insight into their own thought processes. Once they can think in terms of cause and effect, We can ask others to address outcomes of current policies. What do they want, for instance, from gerrymandering, voter suppression, pollution, economic inequality, racism, and discrimination? Whatever they're feeling hints at today, we can invite them to extend it into the future. So you can see that happening, and it's okay with you. What values would suffer? Understanding listening. Listening is a conscious effort to give thoughtful consideration to another's idea. Recall when you expressed a comment significant to you and the other person was silent, perhaps granting you an that left you wanting to repeat yourself. You wanted to know they considered your words, and the more urgent your message, the clearer the response you expected. Wife says, "I'm getting so fed up I'm ready to divorce you." Husband, watching TV. Wife, "That does it." Leaves, slamming door. To assure her he is actively attending to her words, the husband instead can look up to meet his wife's eyes as she talks, turn down the TV, implying, "I'm not going to take my attention from you instantly," and adjust his head, shoulders, and body position to direct them toward her, showing he will give her full attention for a while. When she continues heatedly, "I'm tired of never being able to communicate with you," his face shows concern, suggesting, "I realize you're upset." As she completes her sentence, he nods briefly, indicating, "I followed what you said." His eyes may drift as she looks away, but return instantly to hers when she looks at him, especially when delivering an angry comment. His look tells her, "I'm going to face what you feel." To his outer signs of listening, he may add short responses like, "Okay, yeah, whose tone conveys 90% of their meaning. Imagine how just a sound could convey, "I'm trying to understand," or "I understand but I see it differently," or "I have to admit you have a point." A tone alone can transform a positive response into, "Here we go again," or "Come off it," or "I know all about it," etc. Distorting responses. Outcomes worsen quickly when we deliberately distort the other's meaning. Consider the downside to 3 ineffective responses the husband might make. When the wife says, "I don't like the way things are," the husband answers, "You want everything your own way. Am I supposed to stand on my head? You're cute when you're mad." Each answer distorts or evades the wife's meaning. The first extremized, the second ridiculed, the third teased, and none dealt with her statement. Better might be, "Okay, let's take them one at a time. You seem madder than I've ever seen you before. Keep talking, I want to understand what you mean." He tries to get specific, then acknowledges how she feels, and then tries to continue listening. He shows no aim to distort, a principle routinely violated as people deliberately twist another's meaning to attack it. exploratory responses. A listener can search out what the other means and show interest. You've thought a lot about this. I'd like to hear your idea. We can invite them to develop it further. Could you say more about it? Did you want to add something? What else affects the situation? A stream of questions can let another know we are interested in them and broaden the topic. If they talked about feelings, we can ask about experiences. If about experiences and feelings, ask about facts and ideas. If about self, ask about relationships, and vice versa. If about possibilities, ask about opinions, etc. We noted above, however, that our questions can easily take over and make it harder for the other to explore their own thinking, so we need to notice, are we talking now about my perspective, even on their problem, or their perspective? Many people, after saying a sentence or two, pause before going on. They may be uncomfortable continuing unless they really think we want to hear them. And they wait for a cue, word, or gesture, inviting them to talk longer. The issue of focus addresses this need. An important listener activity is to refocus on what the other is saying. In the classic defocusing response, we stop talking about their idea to talk about our idea. One repeatedly experiencing this begins to think, people don't want to listen to me, which in a young person can generate social anxieties, hesitance expressing their ideas, and distaste competing for talking time. A refocusing response turns full attention back to the speaker, perhaps even acknowledging the shift. I got sidetracked. What were you saying? We refocus most directly by summarizing the person's words in a way they know they are welcome to continue. Let's talk about the point you were making. You were connecting two ideas. Attempt to understand. All of us want others to respect our inner world, and we experience that when they try to understand us. This makes our attempt at that the most important quality of our listening, and encourages people to talk more than any other factor. If they sense that we are not going to distort, extremize, or ridicule their ideas, nor use their information against them, most people will say more. It is reassuring also to know that as a listener, we do not have to get it right. If the other's response shows we do not understand, we accept their correction, listen carefully, and again try to express our grasp of their ideas. On a consulting team, I once helped conduct staff training at a large Eastern correctional facility for girls. The workshop covered approaches to communications, affective education, and team building. Months later, at a seminar at a different location, I encountered one of the people we had trained before and asked him what benefit, if any, he had gained from our prior workshop. "The single thing that helped me the most," he replied, "was just to find out that listening alone helps people." He had always assumed, he said, that when people told you their ideas, you should then offer your ideas to help them solve a problem or improve their thinking. we got across to him that people by themselves would begin to think through their problems, understand themselves better, and integrate their ideas if someone listened to them talk it out. Checkpoints. We can check ourselves on a few key qualities of our outreach. Do I experience respect toward this person? Do I match them in all the ways I can? Do they know I want to understand them? Do they experience me understanding them? Have I asked them to listen to me? Have I explained the world I want? Have I explained how it relates to their values?